"Get in the car," ordered the silent CEO, Millionaire. She had no idea he was saving her life and her daughter. It was just after 9:00 p.m. when Hailey Rivera stepped off the bus, her daughter's small hand clasped tightly in hers. The streets of the neighborhood were quiet, washed in pale orange light from flickering street lamps. Maya skipped alongside her, humming a tune only 5-year-olds knew. Hailey tried to calm the unease crawling up her spine. Maybe it was the darkness, or maybe it was instinct. She glanced over her shoulder for the 3rd time in 2 blocks. A motorcycle's engine rumbled faintly behind them, slower than traffic should be. She quickened her pace. Maya looked up. "Mummy, just a little faster, baby." They turned the corner toward their apartment building when the motorcycle suddenly revved and swerved in front of them, cutting them off. The rider, dressed in black, helmet visor down, did not say a word. He dismounted slowly, standing tall, hands loose at his sides. Hailey's heart dropped. She pulled Maya behind her and stepped back instinctively, her body shielding her daughter. "Stay behind me," she whispered, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound firm. Then headlights. A black SUV came screeching to a halt just feet away, tires skidding on the wet asphalt. The door swung open. A tall man stepped out. No expression, no hesitation. "Get in the car," he said flatly, his voice low, controlled. An order, not a request. Hailey froze, her mind raced. Stranger danger. But the man did not move toward her. He just stood there, the SUV idling behind him, engine humming like it was holding its breath. The man in black took 1 step toward them. Hailey made a choice. She grabbed Maya and rushed to the SUV. The stranger held the door open and closed it behind them in one motion, then slid into the driver's seat. The SUV peeled away, the other man shrinking in the rear-view mirror. Maya started crying, clutching her mother tightly. Hailey turned toward the driver, eyes wide, voice sharp with fear. "Who are you? What is this?" The man kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "That's not an answer," she snapped, trying to steady her breathing. "Are you with him?" "No." "Then why were you there?" He reached down, opened the center console, and pulled out a small folding knife. Without looking at her, he extended it backward, hilt first. "You can hold this just in case." Hailey blinked, stunned. Her fingers hesitated, then closed around the handle. It was cold, solid. Her grip tightened, and her breathing slowed. He was not trying to harm her. He had no weapon pointed at her. He had given her one. Maya hiccuped in the back seat, still trembling. The man glanced at the rearview mirror, then spoke again, voice just above a whisper. "There was danger. You were being followed." "I have been monitoring the area." Hailey stared at him. "Monitoring? Are you a cop?" "No. Then what are you?" He did not answer right away, just drove turn after turn away from her neighborhood, deeper into the city where streetlights grew brighter and traffic more consistent. "Finally," he said, "someone who is trying to make sure you and your daughter get home alive." The SUV turned into a quiet cul-de-sac lined with high-security apartment buildings. He pulled up to a gated entry. The security guard didn't ask questions. The gate opened automatically. As they entered the underground parking garage, Hailey asked more quietly now, "Why me?" Still looking ahead, he said, "You are not the first." That answer gave her pause. The SUV came to a slow stop. He turned off the engine and stepped out without a word. Hailey hesitated. Then the back door opened. He leaned down, not toward her, but toward Maya. His tone softened. "You're okay now," he said gently. Maya appeared at him with wide eyes, her lower lip quivering. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. Hailey watched her daughter, then looked up at the man again. Her voice was utter gaze for the first time. His eyes were striking, grey, steady, unreadable. "Damian," he said. Damian Grant. The name meant nothing to her yet. But what he had just done meant everything. The apartment was nothing like what Hailey expected. It was quiet, clean, tucked inside a high-security complex with guards at the entrance and cameras at every corner. As Damian led them through the underground parking garage into a private elevator, Hailey kept Maya close, still clutching the small folding knife he had given her. They entered a minimalist apartment on the 7th floor. White walls, soft lighting, sleek furniture, everything in place, but not lived in. It felt more like a safe house than a home. Damian motioned to the couch. "You can sit," he said simply. Hailey didn't move. Her heart was still pounding. She watched him move to a side table and place a file folder down with a calmness that unnerved her. "Where are we?" she asked finally. "Somewhere he can't reach you," Damian replied, removing his coat. "Who?" she pressed, voice shaking. "You keep saying he, but who are you even talking about? And why were you there tonight? Why us?" Damian looked at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he flipped open the folder and slid it across the table toward her. Hailey hesitated, then stepped forward, Maya clinging to the hem of her jacket. She opened the folder. Inside were printed surveillance stills, grainy but clear. The first image showed a man standing across the street from a preschool. The second, the same man, outside her apartment building. The third, near the community center where she worked on Wednesdays, all within the last week. Hailey's knees buckled slightly. She sat down. "No," she whispered. Damian spoke quietly. "His name is Brian Keller. He was convicted of aggravated domestic assault 3 years ago, released 6 weeks ago on parole." Hailey swallowed hard, lips trembling. "I know who he is." Damian didn't interrupt. She stared at the photos, each one a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. Her fingers hovered over the last image. Keller leaning against a lamppost, arms crossed, head turned directly toward the camera. "I was a witness in his case," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I helped his wife file for protection, gathered evidence, testified in court. That is why he's watching you now." Damian said, "We started tracking him last week when his name flagged our system. He requested footage from a public camera database. One of our engineers noticed the pattern. Why would a security firm care about some parole?" she asked, suspicion creeping in again. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crossed the room, opened a drawer, and retrieved a manila envelope. "He wasn't just looking for random locations," Damian continued. "He pulled video from your street, your child's school," and he paused, then added, "your workplace." Hailey's hands clenched. "He's planning something," she said flatly. "Yes, and you, what? You just decided to be our bodyguard." "No," Damian said. "I am the CEO of Grant Shield. I do not make field visits, ever." Hailey blinked. "Then why were you there tonight?" For the first time, something flickered in Damian's expression. It wasn't cold or guarded. It was regret. Because I recognized your name, he admitted quietly. She stared at him, confused. Damon's voice dropped. My sister was in a situation like that. No one stood up for her. No one testified. The silence that followed was thick. I'm sorry, Hailey whispered. He nodded once, not looking for sympathy. I can have 2 agents escort you and your daughter to another city, he offered. Or, if you prefer, you can stay here temporarily until this is resolved. Hailey looked down at Maya, who had curled up on the couch, head in her lap, already half asleep. Her tiny hand clutched the edge of Hailey's sweater like a lifeline. No more running, Hailey said softly. We've done that too long. Daman didn't press. He walked to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a fresh set of linens. You'll be safe here. Hailey looked at him as he moved silently around the room, preparing the pull-out bed with quiet efficiency. The man barely spoke more than 10 words at a time, and yet somehow she believed him. She looked down at the photos again. Brian Keller was back, but so was something else. She had almost forgotten how to feel. Safety. The rain came quietly that night, tapping against the windows like a lullaby for a city that never really slept. But inside the apartment, sleep had not come for Hailey. She sat, curled up on the small couch, wrapped in a thin blanket, legs tucked beneath her, staring out into the dark skyline beyond the glass. The city lights flickered softly, casting distant shadows. It looked so peaceful out there, but inside her, everything felt unsettled. She heard the kettle click. A moment later, Daman appeared, holding a plain ceramic mug. He set it down gently on the table beside her, not forcing conversation, not asking questions, just offering warmth. Chamomile, he said, his voice low. Thank you, she murmured, fingers wrapping around the cup. He took the armchair across from her, settling in quietly, a steady presence in a world that had offered her far too much chaos. I cannot sleep, Hailey admitted, her voice barely louder than the rain. Damian looked at her patient. She hesitated. Then, do you want to know why he's after me? He nodded once. Hailey took a slow breath, collecting herself. 3 years ago, I worked at a shelter. I wasn't licensed as a counselor yet, but I did crisis support, intake, documentation, helping survivors with legal steps. She paused, her gaze distant. There was this woman, Dana, 2 kids, and a husband who played the role of the perfect man in public. But at home, he needed control. He used pain to keep it. She sipped the tea. It steadied her hands. Her youngest came to school one day with a bruise. That's when the school called us. Hailey glanced up at Damian, then backed down. Dana was terrified. She wanted to leave, but she was certain he'd find her. Still, we helped her file for a protective order. I stayed with her the whole time. I filled out the affidavit myself. Her hands were shaking too badly to hold a pen. Damian's expression never changed, but he leaned forward slightly, listening. She needed someone to testify, Hailey continued. The prosecution had evidence for the arrest, but they needed someone who had walked beside her, who could speak for her. She swallowed. So, I did. I stood in court, described everything I saw, the bruises, the patterns, the fear. I told the truth, and he went to prison, Damian said. Hailey nodded. 3 years. He was supposed to serve 5, but he got out early last month. Good behavior. Her voice was bitter. And now, Daman said slowly, he's coming after you. Not his ex-wife, not his own children, just me, she said quietly. Because in his mind, I destroyed his family. Not the fists, not the fear. Me. Silence filled the room again. Then Damian leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You did the right thing, he said, even when it cost you peace. Hailey looked at him, eyes searching. There was no pity in his face, just something unexpected, respect, maybe even admiration. A soft sound broke the quiet. From the hallway, Maya appeared, rubbing her eyes, wearing her oversized pajamas with little stars on them. Her hair was a mess, her steps groggy. Mummy. Hailey stood quickly, moving to her. Hey, sweetheart, did the rain wake you? Maya shook her head, blinking at Damian. You're still here, she said, surprised. I am, Damian replied gently. Couldn't sleep either. Maya yawned, then walked closer, hiding something behind her back. With a shy smile, she handed Domin a piece of paper. He unfolded it. A child's drawing. Crayon lines, a glowing yellow streetlight above 3 figures. One tall with square shoulders, one smaller with long hair, and the smallest with pigtails. They were all holding hands. That's us, Maya said proudly. You, me, and Mummy. Hailey's breath caught. Maya pointed. It's our safe place. I usually draw it when I'm scared, but tonight I wasn't, so I made one for you. Damian stared at the drawing, then slowly folded it as if it was something sacred. Thank you, he said softly. Maya nodded, hugged her mum, then turned to go. I'm going back to bed now. Hailey kissed her forehead. Okay, baby. Sweet dreams. When Maya disappeared into the hallway, silence returned. Hailey turned to Damian. She's never drawn anyone else in that picture before, she said. Not even her father. Damian didn't respond immediately. He was smoothing the fold in the paper gently over and over, and in that quiet gesture, Hailey saw it. He wasn't just protecting them anymore. He was beginning to love them. The apartment Damian offered them was smaller than the first, but it felt warmer. It was one of the secured units within the Grand Shield private network. A quiet building tucked behind a discreet gate, guarded, monitored, and surprisingly cozy. Hailey hesitated at first, but after days of no news on Brian Keller, she accepted the offer, not for herself, but for Maya. It only took a few hours before Maya gave the place a nickname, the Lightning Castle. She said it was because Domin's car looked like it had lightning wheels. From then on, she began calling him Mr. Thunder, because you drive fast, she explained, sitting cross-legged on the couch one afternoon. Crayons scattered everywhere like boom, sis. Then you're gone. Damian, unbothered by the new title, nodded solemnly. I will accept that. He visited often, not always announced. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes just a new battery pack for the camera he installed by the front door. He never stayed long, but always made sure everything worked. Efficient, quiet, respectful. It was Maya who cracked his armor first. One rainy Saturday, she asked if he could help her build a magic button. Domin raised an eyebrow. In case the bad guys come, she explained. It should make a sound and maybe blink red. The next morning, he returned with a small box of parts, LED lights, a tiny buzzer, a battery, and a switch. They sat together on the floor for nearly an hour. Maya watching with awe as he assembled a simple alarm system on a plastic board. When he pressed the button, the buzzer let out a high-pitched squeak and a red light blinked. Maya's eyes lit up. It works, Mummy, Look, it's real magic. Damian smiled faintly. Only the best for Lightning Castle. That night, after Maya had gone to bed, Hailey lingered in the kitchen, watching the rain through the window. Damian stood beside her, not speaking. He never pushed for conversation, and somehow that made it easier to open up. She's never felt this safe before, Hailey said softly. Damian didn't reply, but his presence was steady, grounded. Dinner became a small tradition after that. On Thursdays, he would bring over takeout, usually Thai food, sometimes Indian, and they would sit at the tiny dining table, while Maya talked about school, her drawings, and her latest ideas for more magic buttons. One evening, while they were eating curry during a particularly loud storm, the lights flickered briefly. Maya giggled. Mr. Thunder brought the thunder. Domin looked up from his plate. You think I control the weather now? Maya nodded seriously. You protect castles and moms. He raised an eyebrow at Hailey, who nearly choked on her rice, laughing. It was the first real laugh she had allowed herself in weeks. Later that night, Maya's small tablet stopped working. The charger port had broken. Tears welled in her eyes. Her drawings were saved on that device, including one she had been working on for Damian. Without a word, Damian knelt down, took the tablet, examined the port, and pulled a tiny repair kit from his backpack. He worked in silence. Hailey stood nearby, watching his hands move with surprising gentleness. There, he said, finally holding it out. Maya took it and pressed the screen. The image loaded. 3 figures standing under an umbrella, one tall, one with pigtails, one with flowing yellow hair, all smiling. She threw her arms around Damian. Thank you for protecting us. He hesitated, then rested a hand on her back, careful like she was glass. Hailey watched the scene, something soft settling in her chest. She did not speak, but when Damian looked up at her, her eyes held something they hadn't before. Trust, the kind that was hard-earned, quiet, fragile, but real and maybe beginning to grow. The days had begun to blur together in the best possible way. Hailey cooked more. Maya sang more. Damian showed up with fewer reasons, but always something small. A new sketchbook, a motion sensor upgrade, a takeout meal. Their little world had started to resemble a home, but Hailey knew it could not last forever. One night, as she tucked Maya into bed, her daughter asked, "Are we going to live here forever, Mummy?" Hailey paused. "Maybe not forever, sweetheart. Just until things are safe. But I like it here, and I like Mr. Thunder." Hailey smiled, but said nothing. Later, when she stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, the weight of it returned. The feeling that she was imposing, leaning too hard on someone who never signed up for this. The next morning, she packed 2 small bags, just enough for her and Maya. She left a note for Damian on the kitchen table. "Thank you for everything. You gave us something I thought we would never have again. Safety, but I cannot stay in someone else's life forever. Take care of yourself, Hailey." She left without saying goodbye. They checked into a small extended stay motel on the other side of the city. Hailey enrolled Maya in a nearby after-school program and quietly resumed part-time work at the community support center. 2 weeks passed, and then Maya came running into the sense office one afternoon, breathless. "Mummy, I saw him. The man with the black hat." Hailey's heart froze. She rushed outside. There, across the street near the bus stop, stood a figure leaning against a pole, head down, hands in his pockets. She could not see his face, but the build, the stillness, the presence. She knew it. Brian Keller. She called the police immediately. An officer arrived 15 minutes later, but by then the man was gone. No footage, no proof. "We'll keep an eye out," the officer said, unconvinced. That night, Hailey barely slept. She pushed a chair under the door handle. She kept Maya close. The nightmares returned. 3 days later, she decided to do something normal, something simple. They went grocery shopping. The parking lot of the supermarket was half empty, the evening sun dipping low behind the buildings. Hailey held Maya's hand tightly as they crossed toward their car. That was when she heard it, the sound of boots scraping pavement. She turned. There he was, Brian. No helmet this time, just a baseball cap pulled low, eyes locked on her, smiling. "Long time," he said quietly. Hailey froze. Maya whimpered. Brian took a step forward. Then a voice behind him, sharp, calm, and cutting like a blade. "There are 3 cameras on you right now. Take another step." Brian turned. Damian stood there, dressed in black, phone in hand, expression unreadable. "You will be eye-dead in less than 5 minutes, Damian added. "You make one wrong move, and this turns into another court case, or worse." Brian clenched his jaw. His eyes flicked to the little girl, then back to Damian. And then he ran. Damian did not chase. He just exhaled slowly and turned toward Hailey. Maya burst into tears and threw herself into his arms. Damian knelt and held her close, one hand gently covering her head. "You're okay now. He's gone." Hailey stood there, breathless, unable to move. Finally, she whispered, "Why did you come?" Damian looked up at her. His eyes were softer than she had ever seen. "Because you still matter," he said. To me, her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Just the tears that spilled freely down her cheeks as the adrenaline broke, and the fear gave way to something she had not felt in years. Relief and something dangerously close to love. The silence in the car was familiar, but this time it was not laced with fear. Damian drove them back to the safe apartment. Maya had fallen asleep in the back seat, her small head resting against the window, arms wrapped around her favorite blanket. Hailey stared out at the passing streetlights, their flickering glow stretching across her thoughts. Finally, when they reached the parking garage and Damian turned off the engine, she spoke. "You never talk much," she said softly, "but you always show up. You always know what to do, why." Damian did not move for a moment. Then he glanced over at her, his features illuminated by the dashboard lights. "I did not always know what to do," he said. There was a weight to his voice, not sharp, not cold, just heavy, like a stone that had been carried for far too long. Hailey turned in her seat to face him. She waited. He rested his hands on the steering wheel, then finally said, "My sister's name was Alina." Hailey's breath caught. She was younger. Damian continued, kind to kind. She married someone she thought she could fix. Hailey closed her eyes briefly. No one listened when she asked for help. Not the first time, not the second. She stopped asking after that. His voice didn't crack, but his jaw did. One night, she called me. It was short. She said, "I think this is it." I drove like hell. I was too late. Hailey reached out slowly, placing a hand gently over his. "I am so sorry." Damian nodded once. After that, I left the military. I took what I knew about systems, about surveillance, about patterns. And I built Grand Shield to make sure it would not happen again, Hailey said. To make sure, Damian echoed, his voice a whisper now. No one ever had to feel helpless and alone again. They sat in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because the moment didn't need words. Then quietly, Hailey intertwined her fingers with his. For once, Damian didn't flinch. She didn't know what this was yet. Not exactly, but she knew it was real. It was not about protection anymore. It was about healing. Later that night, after Maya had been tucked into bed, Hailey returned to the living room. Damian had not left yet. He sat at the small kitchen counter sipping water, lost in thought. I think she would be proud of you, Hailey said softly from the doorway. Damian looked up. Elena, Hailey nodded. You turned your grief into something powerful. You gave people back their safety. I did not save her, he said. No, Hailey agreed. But you saved us. A small voice echoed from the hallway. Look, Maya came running in, holding a new sheet of paper freshly scribbled with crayons. She held it up proudly. Damian stood walking over as Maya explained. I made a new drawing for you. He took the paper gently. This time the picture was different. There were 3 figures again. The tallest one had a dark jacket and short hair. The middle one had long blonde curls. The smallest one stood in the center, holding both their hands. Above their heads, Maya had written, My family now. Damian blinked. Hailey leaned over to look. Her throat tightened. Maya grinned. This one is going on the fridge. And just like that, a picture spoke. The words none of them could yet say out loud. Family. The conference room was brighter than Hailey expected. Soft, natural light spilled in through tall windows, casting warmth across the polished wooden floors and carefully arranged seating. The banners read, Safe Homes Initiative, launching protection with purpose. Hailey stood backstage, smoothing the creases of her blouse with nervous fingers. Maya clung gently to her side, wearing a soft yellow dress and her favorite sneakers. Damian had picked them out himself. From the podium, a speaker finished the opening remarks. Then a familiar voice took the microphone. Damian. He wore a dark blazer, no tie, and the look in his eyes was not that of a CEO hosting an event. It was something quieter, more personal. When we think of safety, he began, we often think of walls, locks, cameras, but real safety starts long before that. The room fell into a hush. It begins, he continued, with the people who choose to act even when they are afraid, who protect others even when no one protects them. His eyes swept over the crowd, then landed briefly on Hailey behind the curtain. She is not here today as a victim or a survivor. She is here as a builder of safer homes for others. Maya squeezed Hailey's hand. Damian's voice deepened. She did what no system dared to do. She stood up. She spoke. She faced the unthinkable and still showed up for the next person and the next and the next. He paused, then smiled gently. I can think of no better person to advise us in building real lasting safety than Hailey Rivera. A murmur of applause began, rising quickly into a standing ovation as Hailey stepped onto the stage. Maya holding her hand tightly. Damian extended his other hand, not for a handshake, but simply to steady her. Hailey looked out at the crowd, faces of donors, survivors, community leaders. She wasn't used to the spotlight, but with Maya beside her and Damian just behind, she felt grounded. I never imagined being here, Hailey said into the mic, her voice clear. Not on a stage, not in a room where people listened. She took a breath. There was a time I thought helping others would come at too high a cost. I was right in some ways, but if I had to choose again, I would do it the same way every time. She looked at Maya, who gave her a tiny nod of encouragement. Because one voice can make a home safer. One choice can break a cycle, and one safe place, just one, can change a life. Applause swelled again, but it was not just polite. It was heartfelt. Hailey saw it in their eyes. She had said something that mattered. As the crowd quieted, Damian stepped forward once more. He leaned into the microphone, then, with only the trace of a smile, said, "Welcome our new community safety advisor to Safe Homes." Hailey turned to him, her surprise visible. "You did not tell me that part," she whispered. "You earned it," he replied softly. "This is not a gift. It is recognition." She blinked back emotion, and as the lights above them glowed warmer, Hailey reached out, took Damian's hand in front of everyone. Not for show, not for thanks, but as a gesture of something now built between them, trust, and beside them. Maya lifted their joined hands like a champion's victory pose. The room broke into applause again, this time not just for the initiative, but for the family standing at its heart. The morning sunlight spilled into the apartment like a gentle whisper of peace. Birdsong filtered in from the trees outside, and the scent of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven made the little home feel even smaller, cozier, like the kind of place people dreamed of, but rarely believed they could have. Mia's laughter rang through the hallway. "I cannot find my red shoes," she cried out dramatically, flinging open closet doors, crawling under chairs. Hailey stepped out of the bedroom, holding a brush in one hand, smiling at the familiar chaos. "Try under the couch again, sweetheart." But before Maya could launch into another frantic search, a low voice called out from the front door. "Looking for these." There stood Damian, already dressed, sleeves rolled up, a soft grin on his usually serious face. He knelt down, holding out the red shoes. Maya squealed in delight and ran over. Mr. Thunder to the rescue again. She plopped onto the carpet, but Damian stopped her. "Wait," he said gently. "Let me." With a quiet care that made Hailey's chest ache, he helped her daughter slip on each shoe, adjusting the straps, brushing dirt from the sides. When he was done, he looked up at Maya. Perfect fit. Ready for the day. She nodded, ready. Then Damian stood and turned to Hailey. There was a shift in his posture, a stillness, something different in his eyes. From his jacket pocket, he pulled a small velvet box and held it out to her. Hailey blinked. "What's this?" He opened it. Inside, nestled against the dark blue lining, was a delicate silver ring, simple, elegant, and engraved inside just 2 lines. "You matter. You always did," she gasped softly, hand rising to her mouth. Damian stepped closer. His voice dropped to a low, earnest whisper. "I have seen the worst of the world," he said. "I have watched it break people. I have watched it try to break you." He reached for her hand, and this time it was he who intertwined their fingers. But you stood up anyway. You protected. You loved. You rebuilt. His thumb brushed the back of her palm. "So now, will you let me protect both of you for life?" Hailey could not speak at first, not because she was unsure, but because every wall she had spent years building had quietly fallen away. Not with grand gestures, not with promises, but with steady presence, kindness, safety, love. She nodded. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was clear. Yes, before they could say more, Mia burst out. Wait, does that mean Mr. Thunder is my dad now? Hailey laughed through her tears. Damian knelt again, meeting Maya at eye level. If that's what you want, he said, voice warm. Maya threw her arms around him. Yes, now I have a dad, too. From the living room window, morning light poured in, golden and full of promise. They walked out onto the balcony together, the three of them. Hailey in her robe, Damian still holding the ring box, Maya twirling in her red shoes. The city stretched out before them, but for once it did not feel overwhelming. It felt like a new beginning, not marked by silence or shadows or fear, but by the sound of shared laughter, by two hands held tightly in trust, by a little girl's joy echoing in the sunlight.